Now that I have my header and my footer populated with my HTML and my structure referencing my CSS, I need to go in and evaluate what other things can be dynamic. And as I'm looking at the class notes here, things that you might want to consider would be this. Anytime you want a link going back to your home page, there's a PHP call for that. Anytime you want to reference the title of your site, there's a PHP call for that. Remember, the site name can change on the fly. You're doing that through the dashboard under settings. So you don't want to be hard coding this unless it's absolutely necessary. You want the dashboard, the PHP, and the fact that this is all dynamic to come together that way. If you need a search form, there's a PHP call for that. If you want the site description, you just pop that in where you want the site description. The navigation, a little bit hairier, so I'm not going to do that in this particular menu. Adding widget section, that'll be a completely separate movie. Other things, however, that are a little bit easier. At the bottom of my footer, again, I had a copyright and a date and the blog title. Well, you don't want to have to code those by hand. When it turns 2012 or if I have a new site title, I want that to change dynamically. There's also some kind of funky things about images. So let's just kind of take this line by line and evaluate what things we could have dynamic. So in the header, just kind of getting my bearings again, up at the top, this section here, this is what was existing in the PHP file. And down below, this is our particular structure. So eventually I'll get rid of this, but I do want to reference it for right now. So kind of looking at our structure, I'm starting with a div tag holding an image, and I have to go into the images directory and find Archie. Well, unfortunately, it doesn't work that easily when you're using WordPress. You do have to have a little bit of a PHP call kind of tagged in there. So I'm going to move over to my notes, and there's a section called images, and if it's an image source, I'm just going to copy, and all this is really saying is that, go to the template directory of your blog. That's where the images directory lives. So I'm going to copy that, and right in front of images, I'll paste that. So the good thing is the PHP is very colorful and red. And I know that sounds kind of simplistic, but if it's not red, if you're seeing a non-colorful page, something probably isn't accurate. And you will actually get little red warning things if things are wrong. And just undo, we'll kind of evaluate what happened and try again. So here's the PHP. PHP always begins with the less than sign, question mark, PHP. It ends with the question mark and the greater sign. And then here's the / So just kind of study and compare and contrast. Okay, so that will bring our image in. The next thing we have is kind of pick around at this a little bit. I love Archie. Well, that's the name of my site. Unless I'm working for a client and they say, no, we want it to be I love Winnie, or I love a different dog, or I hate Archie. So we want this to be dynamic based on what is typed into the dashboard. So moving back over to some of the things, anytime you want a site title, so instead of typing out the site title, we're going to use this PHP. And I'm copying from this little helpful notes. Hopefully they're helpful, but a lot of this you'll find existing already in the PHP. So here is the PHP asking for, and it looks a little bit hairy, but the blog info, what's the name of the blog? So I'm getting that whole HTML structure. I'll copy that. And instead of I love Archie, in its place goes the PHP. Now, it's in an H1 tag, and I've already styled that, so it's going to take on that styling from my style sheet. So it will be the blog title, but if I have special fonts, special colors, that will all be because of my styling. Okay, surrounding that then, I have right now just a placeholder, but the idea is that as you're working into the site, I could click on the name and go back to the home page. This piece of PHP, link back to the home page, echo, get, option, home, all of that. You can copy it either from here or you can find, if you just kind of study what's already happening in the PHP, well, here's a link going back to home. So I'm going to get all of that, copy that. So instead of a pound sign, did I get the right? I'm sorry, let me just make sure. Up through the closing bracket, okay. And I will replace my pound sign, which is just a placeholder anyway, to the PHP that references back to the home page. So now I've defined my image. I have my title. I have the link back to my home page. So this section's pretty good. Now for right now, we also need to, big part of this is making our navigation dynamic, but for now, we're just gonna leave that and that will be a different movie. So I'm ready to save and upload this. Let's remove, oops, not the body, I wanna keep that. The structure that was there. So remember this page wrap header, all of this was from the original header. I want to remove that so that I'm starting with my particular document. So I'm going to save that and upload the header. So here I am in Files. I'm still connected to my server, and I like to actually work in the modified. There we go. So I know that the most recent file that I worked on was header. I can click on that, upload. I do not need dependent files. Okay, that one's good to go. In the next movie, we'll convert some information about the footer.